fight, they held back until I, Deborah, arose. Until I arose, a mother in Israel. I like to preach from the subject this morning, arise. Arise. I didn't get an opportunity to preach for Mother's Day last week, so I'm going to preach my Mother's Day sermon this week, amen? Amen. With a twist. Because I didn't have a Mother's Day sermon last week, but I have a sermon this week about Deborah. Deborah is one of the heroic women of history. She is she was one of the most talented women of the Bible. She was a wife, a mother, a prophetess, a judge, a poet. She was a singer, and she was also a political leader. Her life is a wonderful example of how one person has the power to influence society for good. The great influence that Deborah possessed is evident in the fact that all of Israel came to her for counsel and judgment. She lived during a time in Israel's history which marked a low point spiritually. They had turned their backs on God, and as such, each lived according to their own will. It was such a tragic time, but God raised up Deborah to rule over his people. She was wise and fair. She was intelligent and able to handle difficult situations. All of Israel was under her jurisdiction, and Israelites came from all over the land to have her settle their disputes. And she did so under a palm tree called the Palm of Deborah. God raised her up to lead his people during the time when they were being oppressed by Jabin, the Canaanite king, and Sisera, the commander of his massive army, which included 100,000 soldiers with 900 chariots. You remember the story. I've told you before. Sisera and his army terrorized the people of God for 20 years. They destroyed their vineyards, raped their women, and killed their children. One day, Deborah sent for Barak, the military leader of Israel's army, and told him that it was God's will that he gather 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and get into position on Mount Tabor, where he would give Sisera and his entire army over to him. Though God promised the victory, Barak refused to go without Deborah. To make a long story short, Deborah honored Barak's request to go with him, and there on Mount Tabor, they positioned themselves to fight just as God commanded. Sisera and his massive army of 100,000 soldiers and 900 chariots arrived, making their way through the portion of the Kishon River that was completely dry. And as they did, the Lord sent an earthquake and the flash flooding, and all 900 iron chariots got stuck in the riverbed. Tell me you gonna fight against God and win. Amen. Then the sleet fell from heaven. Hail fell from heaven, blinding the Canaanite soldiers, who panicked and ran aimlessly in whichever direction they could. Barak and his itty-bitty army of 10,000 men, not impacted by the storm, began to hunt down Sisera's army and killed each one of them boogers, all 100,000 of them, one by one. Sisera escaped to the land of the Kenites and sought refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kentite. I don't know if you recall the story, but Sisera asked her for a drink and she gave him a glass of milk. Considering the impact that it had on him, it had to have been warm milk, because he fell asleep and Jael hammered a tent peg through his temple, killing him instantly. God, just as he said, had delivered his people from under the oppressive hand of the Canaanite, just like that. Our text this morning is a song that Deborah composed after the miraculous victory. She sang, "Hear this, you kings. Listen, you rulers, even I, will sing to the Lord. I will sing the praise of the Lord, the God of Israel, in song. When you, Lord, went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down waters. She said the mountains quaked before the Lord, the one of Sinai, before the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned, travelers took to winding paths. Villagers in Israel would not fight. They held back until I, Deborah, arose. While there are scholars who see Deborah's efforts as heroic in that they led Israel to turn from their wicked ways and back to God, there are just as many who see her acts as out of order or wrong or necessitated only because there was no man to do it. Y'all know I'm going somewhere with this. This, my sisters and brothers, is nothing but sexism, prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination against women. Sexism has been accepted and tolerated in many forms since the beginning of time. Truth be told, outside of racism against African Americans, sexism, in my humble opinion, is the most prevalent problem that plagues modern society today. Men, y'all know I love y'all, but men, for one reason or another, have been led to believe that they are in every way superior to women, and as such should be afforded certain privileges. In fact, for centuries, scientists perpetuated these beliefs by concluding that the brain of the male species was larger than that of the female species, which made them think that they were smarter than women. This has been proven time after time after time that it is inaccurate. Yet, sexism still remains a problem. Y'all gonna be come on, y'all not gonna talk to me here, brothers. The Bible declares that men and women were handcrafted by God, both in his image and equal in their being. Men and women were both commissioned by God to